Welcome to Soul Elevation, where you can guide your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin. I loved connecting with two special ladies and friends of mine in this episode, Sheila Seppi and Barbara Lamb, who discussed their recently released book, Cosmic Convergence, Journeys of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids. We cover fascinating ground in this episode, such as what walk-ins, starseeds, and hybrids are, what the similarities and differences are between them, and importantly, how people discover which, if any of these, they are. We also talk about the makeup of our spiritual anatomy, as well as the holographic field, where healing of not only the individual, but potentially an entire ancestral line can occur. There is a ton of helpful insights in this episode, and I'm so excited for you to hear it. Sheila Seppi is an expert on walk-ins, an international speaker, author, and founder of the Conscious Awakening Network. She shares her unique experience as a walk-in soul, having entered the body of a 38-year-old mother, bringing with her a higher consciousness and spiritual gifts. Sheila's mission is to guide humanity through spiritual awakening, connecting them with their higher selves and the universal consciousness. Barbara Lamb, a world-renowned hypnotherapist, is celebrated for her groundbreaking work with alien abductions, hybrids, and experiencers. She's regressed over 2,000 individuals and documented countless experiences of encounters with extraterrestrial humans, shedding light on the reality of ET human interactions and hybridization programs. I've had the pleasure of interviewing both Barbara and Sheila previously, so I highly encourage you to listen to their earlier episodes to learn more about them. Check out episodes 195 and 230 for Barbara and 226 for Sheila. So before we dive in, I first want to share my excitement about the Sedona Ascension Retreat, March 14th through the 16th, 2025. I can't wait to see amazing guests such as Bashar, Robert Edward Grant, Billy Carson, William Henry, and previous meditation conversation guests like Adam Apollo, psychic lawyer Mark Anthony, Alan Steinfeld, Vivian Chavot, Amanda Romagna, and so many more amazing guests. Use code KaraGoodwin5 for 5% off your ticket. I hope to see you there. And now, enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Sheila and Barbara. I'm so excited to be with you both today. Thank you for coming on to talk about your new book.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So you've collaborated on this new book, Cosmic Convergence, Journey of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids. I'd love to start by just getting a little overview on what readers will find in this book.
Oh, well, there is a plethora of information, let me tell you. And it's not just about walk-in starseeds and hybrids, because one of the things that I really wanted to preface is how something like this could actually be possible. And I think the first of the book does a really great job of talking about that, everything from how the soul ascends and anchors into physical form and the various layers, especially when we're talking about the oversoul and the Shantias Khan and all those various aspects. We also are talking about different dimensions and densities and timelines. We talk about everything that I thought might be important, including parallel universes and those types of things. But really, for me, what I want readers to take away from this is the fact that we are these multidimensional beings that are having these phenomenal experiences, and really to understand the broadness of the universe and what, our place in there.
I think that this book is such an opener for so many people. More and more people, I think, are wondering about reality and other aspects of reality, other dimensions, other frequencies, and so forth. And this book really delineates so much of that, more than any book that I'm aware of. It's really wonderful in that way.
That's so beautiful. And I know, Sheila, with your first book, Cosmology of the Soul, I got so much from the explanation. It was kind of the anatomy of, from a soul,
Yeah.
from the spiritual anatomy, which sounds like it's also what you're hitting on here, which is just amazing. Do you want to give a little rundown of the anatomy of the soul?
Sure. One of the things that where this book differs from the other book is I go a little bit more in depth. So for people who have already read that, this is going to be fantastic because you already have a little bit of a background with it. But one of the first things that I always tell people is, according to my memories, we all began in that source consciousness field, that plasmatic space. And when source desired to know itself and the individuation of the soul aspects began, one of the things that happened were all of these thoughts on how experiences could occur or how the unfoldment of what we would call universes could take place. And those took place in the form of what we would call templates. Those templates are then located in what's called the monadic consciousness, which, source is already etheric, but let's think of the etheric body of the etheric body. It's where all that information is housed. Now, from the source, as things began to individuate, as things began to divide out, everything was also contained within the higher self energy. So we cannot get away from that. We will always be connected to our higher self and to that source energy. But within that higher self energy, also various divisions, if you will, or layers of vibration of creation began to occur. So let's just take one of those little templates, which in the book I use as the example of the Master Oversoul. Now, the Master Oversoul is going to contain the oversouls of everything that is created, period, whether it is on Earth, whether it is on another planet, whether it is in another universe. All of the oversoul energy will be contained within that. Then all of that energy vibrates at various rates and various frequencies, and those begin to come together. Those specific vibrations really create what we now call our soul groups. Now, our soul groups, again, can be from Earth and they can be from other planets because, remember, we're all contained within that source and all within that higher self energy. When we move from those soul groups down to soul families, those families are made up of individual units. So let's think of a cluster of grapes that could serve as your soul family. One of those grapes would be the individual oversoul. Now, within your individual oversoul are the collection of all of the aspects of you, past, present, future aspects that really make you you. And this is really what I would consider your primary oversoul. From that primary oversoul, you're going to begin to individuate to have other experiences. So I always like to use this analogy. If your fist is the oversoul, these are all the multidimensional aspects of yourself. And you can have so many different experiences. Typically, we have about 12 at the same time, but you can have hundreds of thousands of experiences because it depends on how you end up individuating. But all of these, this little aspect, this is where I started talking about this in the book, The Walk-In's Cosmology of the Soul. This is the Shantias Khan. And as this Shantias Khan begins its individuation process into a human form, from here, this contains everything you need. It's kind of like your own little private cloud storage. It has all of your choice points for this lifetime. It has all of the echoes of your spiritual body, of the holographic field. It has all of the information for your chakras. It has all of the information that's actually going to make you for this personality life. So this begins to incarnate. It comes down through that higher self stream. And as that higher self then anchors onto the physical form, then that's what becomes the personality of this lifetime. And so that is the way that I see this. Sorry, my little dog wants to love on a snake and be included. But this is how I've been told, and this is the analogy that was given to me by my soul team on how we individuate and come in as a soul. And then, of course, we have so much contained out here in our holographic field, and they've begun to teach me about that as well.
Oh, wow. Well, I can't wait to get in the holographic field. But while we're talking about the anatomy, the spiritual anatomy, so you were saying like the oversoul is like the hand, the whole hand, right? And then the Shantias Khan is like a finger, the individuated finger. So that's as the oversoul starts to individuate. Now, you are a walk-in, and that's what your first book is about. And I know you touch on this in this book too, because it's Journey of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids. But so if we take that analogy of the fingers, how does that apply to a walk-in, for example, where you have this one human form, you had one soul, and then when you were 38, a new soul came in.
Yes.
Can you help with that analogy, how that would work?
Absolutely. So a lot of times with a walk-in, there will just be a switch from one of these little fingers from the Shantias Khan, or with a walk-in, the higher self, all of that information from the soul is extracted back in to the oversoul, and it's kind of like this swirling energy, and a new Shantias Khan is developed. It's very easy when you have two fingers from the same oversoul and you want to do a soul switch. However, in my case, I came from a different oversoul, which was up in this area. So this oversoul was actually all the way up as part of like the soul group, okay? And so then there was another individuated aspect that came. But from here, we were already in a consciousness state. So it made us easy because there was already a resonance with the soul frequency because we were in that same cluster of grapes, if you will. So there was already that resonance frequency factor that made it easier for this aspect of me to then come in. But for a lot of people, they're pulling other aspects from their oversoul, and they just continue to pull more and more of that oversoul in. Or it can be that sometimes they actually are pulling in more of their soul family information. They're moving up higher in that ladder because if you look at the soul, there's different steps. You know, for simplicity purposes, I can only put so much of what they've shown me in the book because a lot of this I just don't have language for. They show me things and then I have to sit and digest and process it for a period of time before I can even begin to formulate a word that goes with something that I'm being shown. But I think that if people will really look at this, it'll give them a good understanding as to how the soul actually, from my point of view, ascends into the body.
I love it. So, Barbara, you have an amazing book that you co-wrote a few years ago called Meet the Hybrids.
Right.
And I love this book. I learned so much from this book, too. And the new book is The Journey of Walk-in, Starseeds, and Hybrids. So I know that you have a lot of expertise in the hybrid world. What do you go into in this book, and how does that fit into the cosmic convergence?
Well, of course, the hybrids are similar in some ways to the starseeds and the walk-ins in that they are here living with us as humans to really help humanity, basically to raise the consciousness and the spirituality of humanity. So the hybrids are different from walk-ins in the sense that they did not do a soul exchange with somebody who is already here. There are two kinds of hybrids, basically. Some of them are more in proportion extraterrestrial, and they cannot live here, so they live their whole lives on the ship, or maybe on another planet in some cases, or both. But the hybrids that we have talked about in cosmic convergence are the ones who have come to live here, and they're born here. The thing is that they were given extraterrestrial genetics before they were born, in most cases. I know one who was hybridized, that is, injected with extraterrestrial genetics when she was 6 years old. But most of them become hybrid at the point of becoming an embryo. And so that eggs are taken from a woman and sperm is taken from a man and then taken by the other beings, the extraterrestrials, and then mixed together with the extraterrestrial genetics. And then that little mixture, that embryo, is placed in the woman, and she gestates it for around 2 months or so, during which time she experiences being pregnant, and that usually gets validated by an Earth doctor. And then suddenly she realizes that she's not feeling pregnant anymore, and that little embryo has been removed, usually unbeknownst to her when it's done, and taken back onto the ship. And then that embryo is gestated in a big tank of special fluid on the ship, and then is born there, that is removed from the tank and raised there for the whole life of that hybrid. So that's one kind of hybrid. But the time that Sheila and I have emphasized, and I did emphasize in Meet the Hybrids also, that's the kind of hybrid who is actually hybridized before birth, either at conception or maybe 6 months along in gestation in the mother's womb. So those hybrids are all born here, and they live their whole lives as a human, ostensibly. People would not look at them and think, oh, my goodness, how different. They seem like regular people. But they really have extraordinary and unusual abilities, all kind of a huge range of psychic abilities, paranormal abilities, sensitivity, and they have lots and lots of visits with their extraterrestrials who gave them the genetics. And those beings visit these hybrids very frequently, and the hybrids welcome that totally. It's not like being afraid of an abduction. They really totally welcome the beings because, they feel, and rightfully so, like they're part of those beings. They have those genetic aspects in them. So they live their whole lives here, giving service, like the walk-ins do, and the starseeds do also, and so do the hybrids. And so they do a lot of teaching and counseling and consulting and giving lectures and writing, doing podcasts. They do many, many things to sort of enhance or increase the conscious awareness of other humans. And they also form sort of a liaison between people knowing about them and the extraterrestrials. They're sort of slowly introducing to humanity that there are a huge range of extraterrestrial beings. And not only that, but other dimensional beings. So they're real educators in their own ways and are very happy to be here of service. That's true of all three categories that we've written about. But the walk-ins are totally here for service to humanity, and so are the starseeds, and so are the hybrids. Now, the starseeds do not have extraterrestrial genetics like the hybrids do, but they have extraterrestrial lineage. That means that in previous lifetimes, or at least many of them, they have been extraterrestrials themselves, and they have a lot of connection with the extraterrestrial beings. And it's very interesting from my particular point of view, being a therapist and doing regression therapy with many, many, many people, that very often the starseeds are not aware that they are what we call a starseed, but they know that they've had the experience that they've had. They know they've had awareness of the other beings, and they have a very strong sense that they are here in life to help. They're not here for their own selfish reasons. They're here totally to give help to humanity, and in many cases to the earth itself. This has been very, very interesting for me to learn about the 3 different kinds of people through the years, ever since 1991, actually. I've been doing this work. And then combining with Sheila and her fantastic, wise, knowing overview has been a tremendous pleasure. And I think that altogether this book, Cosmic Convergence, brings out so much understanding to people, so much expanding of their awareness of reality. So it is an exciting adventure being involved.
I love
in
it.
this.
Yes, I love it. And thank you for helping to define it, because there is a lot of kind of maybe overlap between the 3. But but I'm curious if somebody's listening and they resonate with, okay, I know that I fit into one of these categories, but I'm not really sure,
I bet you do.
So how can people get more insights? How do people, for example, know that they're a hybrid, that their genetics were mixed with extraterrestrial genetics before they were born? Like, how do people have those insights?
Well, all of the hybrids I know, and it's quite a number, maybe about 17 people or hybrids whom I've really worked with. It's very typical that they do not know that they are a hybrid in most cases until they are adult. And
Interesting.
they've always wondered about themselves, but in many cases they didn't know there was such a thing as an ET human hybrid. So they just grew up knowing that they had a lot of abilities that other people around them, including their family, didn't have. They knew they had a lot of sensitivities that other people didn't have. For instance, they have difficulty with the density that we all live in here on Earth. And other people, they know, don't have any. They don't even think about such a thing as density. It's all just very familiar to us. But they think, oh, wow, this is such a dense place. And without their necessarily consciously knowing it, they've had lots and lots of experiences on the spacecrafts with the beings whose genetics they have. And that's a less dense atmosphere, dense frequency. So that's one thing. They notice that they just experience life here on Earth very differently than anybody else they seem to know experiences it. And they know that they have a whole range of psychic abilities that nobody else they know, including their family, has. And they wonder about that. They wonder about a lot of things. And in some cases, they come to realize as they're growing up that they have something physiologically a little bit different about them. They don't look different. They don't look non-human, but they might have a different blood type than other people, or a different bone consistency, or a different muscle consistency, or different features like that. One of the hybrids had thumbs that were much wider at the tip of the thumb. And it turned out that she did a lot of sculpture work, sculpturing extraterrestrial beings who would channel to her to do the sculptures to represent them as accurately as possible. So it was very fortunate that she happened to have thumbs that made that sculpturing with clay work much more easy and effective. So anyway, most of these hybrids didn't realize until they were at least in their young adult years. And they found out in different ways about that. Usually, some of the beings would consider that this hybrid growing up is mature enough to handle the fact that he or she is a hybrid. So they inform the person. And then it can happen in other ways too, with one of our hybrids who had various types of extraterrestrial genetics. She had quite a large dose of reptilian genetics, and she experienced those reptilians whom she met here and there in her life to be very benevolent, to be really wonderful beings. She really liked them, felt safe with them, respected them a lot. And when she was about 21 years old, suddenly one day, she felt a whole change going on in her body, and she was morphing into her full reptilian form from the genetics that she had in her. And as that was happening, she, of course, was surprised and mystified. But when she realized she was in that full form for a temporary period, she was absolutely thrilled. And then she began to really open to the idea that maybe she had a good portion of genetics of reptilian in her. And then her collection of beings, a few different species of beings who had given their genetics, came to her and reaffirmed, yes, you not only have the reptilian genetics, but you have some Arcturian and Andromedan and Sirian and Pleiadian and so forth. So that ability for her to morph into her reptilian aspect would happen, or has happened, once in a while in her life. And that's true with the other hybrids I know who have reptilian in them. There are two others whom I know who have fully morphed for a brief time.
Wow.
That means an hour or two or a few hours at the most. And yet, even when they morph into their reptilian form, they're recognizable somehow as the person who
Wow.
we know. It's a very, very interesting thing to me that
Yeah.
all of that can happen. And one of the
Wow.
hybrids found out that she was a hybrid by her father, her human Earth father, telling her that she had been created in a lab here on Earth by other people in some sort of secret program within the U.S. military, that they had some extraterrestrial bodies and got the genetics and mixed that with the father's sperm and her mother's eggs and created a hybrid in that way. That committee, that group, had been aware that there is such a thing as ET human hybrids, but they didn't know if they could achieve putting that together and creating a hybrid. And indeed they did very successfully with this one hybrid.
Wow.
And so when she was 35 years old, they told her that or the mother told her. The mother never did know anything about that because she had
Wow.
been drugged to get the eggs taken from her by these humans. And she just did not have any awareness of this. Anyway, that particular hybrid was perfectly happy to be a hybrid and to have all of the contacts that she had with the extraterrestrial beings whose genetics she had, about 4 different types. The only thing she
Fascinating.
was unhappy about was that she felt like she existed because she was an experiment.
Oh, yeah.
But
Right.
otherwise, she was very happy to be a hybrid and to have all the contacts and channelings and downloads and inspirations that she had from those extraterrestrial beings. So in any case,
Wow.
it worked out wonderfully for each of these people.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Uh,
That's incredible. And Sheila, I'm interested from the walk-ins perspective. So I feel like when we talked about the walk-ins, there's such a spiritual, it's much more etheric, spiritual. And I know personally with the galactics, there is such a spiritual element there too. But when people start to learn about starseeds and hybrids, that might not be the first thing that people think about is the spiritual aspect because there is that physicality there.
Yep.
Right.
So I'm curious from if you want to share from your own perspective and experience as a walk-in, how the galactic or cosmic part of it, like the kind of more space aspect to it, fits into your experience.
Well, when I first came in, I came in from a collective, meaning that the group of it's a group of beings whose consciousness has merged together. And we literally were already here in the earth space doing some work. And when the soul of this body cried out to be released, there was an automatic resonance, and it was decided by the collective because we had also merged with other light consciousnesses that I would be the aspect to come in. And so when I came into a religious mindset. I came into a very Western medicine body. One of the things that literally made it possible for the walk-in to come in was the body was very, very sick and had been diagnosed with a plethora of different illnesses. So when I came in, all of a sudden, I also had a spiritual awakening. And I guess you would call it a Kundalini awakening all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I had no idea or no foundational knowledge to share the information that I was experiencing because I had never believed in past lives, yet all of a sudden I had past lives going through my mind. I had never studied the universal knowledge that was coming to me. I had never studied any or had any idea about any kind of alternative healing, but yet all of that was flooding me. At the same time, I was clairvoyant, clairaudient, which I had not been the night before. As a matter of fact, I had all the clairs opened at once, which in and of itself was quite an experience. And then seeing people and hearing people, that really put me into a space of not like, oh, I'm welcoming these spiritual gifts, but more of like, oh, I must be having a mental break because
Oh,
I had no
yeah.
foundational knowledge, as I said, for what was happening. But over time, I came in and I can understand now, I came in as a fully awakened individual. I totally had a spiritual awakening at the same time. Spiritual awakenings differ from person to person, but at the end of it, I think the common thread is that everyone begins to understand that they are a soul and that they are multidimensional and that they are part of the overall larger universe and that things are not what we have been told that they are necessarily. And so with the kind of spirituality that we're talking about, it really differs from person to person because sometimes people may be drawn to Hinduism. Sometimes people may be drawn to the teachings strictly of Buddha or those types of teachings. And then sometimes people have this inner knowing. It's not like that they've read it. They haven't had conversations with people. It's this innate knowledge of being part of the whole and coming in with that understanding of oneness.
I love that. So one of the things that you've been teasing as we've been going has been the holographic nature of reality and of the human body. And I cannot wait for you to explain this a little bit more. So what can you tell us about the holographic fields of the body and how that plays into healing and so forth?
Absolutely. So for me, everything that I share with people are things that I either see, experience, or have worked with my collective to be able to understand. But for me, when I'm working with someone, it's almost as if I am seeing a piece of graph paper. So let's just imagine a graph paper as I talk to you for a moment, because the holographic field really, it's like this energetic matrix that totally surrounds and permeates the physical body, but it exists in layers, and it consists of different energetic codes that's made up of every aspect for our physical, emotional, mental, and all of our spiritual bodies. It also serves as like this repository of information, and it can even hold past imprints from past lives, karmic patterns, karmic lessons, those types of things. And so when I say being holographic, it means also that every part of this field is contained within the whole. And so each layer has its own set of information, if you will, its guidelines that it follows. So if you look at that first holographic field around the body, this energetic grid holds this template, really for the creation of the human form. It has the structural blueprint that guides us, and it helps to develop all the maintenance for the body, for the tissues, for the organs, and all of that information floods not only inward to help create the physical form that we're looking at, but it also expands, and it helps to create the next bodies, the emotional, the mental, the astral, then we have what they have taught me is a grid of matrices that connect to the heart, the throat, the third eye, and to the crown, out to the spiritual body, out to the celestial, on out to the crystalline body, and that crystalline template or the protective field around us. And each of these fields has its own relationship, not just to the holographic field, but it also is connected somewhere in the physical body and up into the higher aspects of, the higher dimensions, and even into like our higher self, into our oversoul, all the way up to where it connects us back to source. So each of these layers is a composite that holds, when I say the graph paper, remember that with each of those little squares, it holds the information of the whole. So when we look at healing, the holographic field, when I was studying total body modification, Dr. Viktor Frankl, who was its creator, also taught us about the grid system. Now, he didn't talk about a holographic field, but he said the grid system of the body. And I learned early on that each of these little blocks is where the physical and the emotional issues will begin to show up. And as I have begun to work with individuals, and because I'm able to see their gridding, if you will, this entirety of the holographic field, sometimes it's as if they have like little Brillo pads stuck, and it will be stuck on multiple of the little smaller grids. And that can be causing issues in the physical and in the emotional and the mental bodies. And so as I begin to pull that Brillo pad, if you will, off, I begin to unweave all of those little strands. And maybe we find out that part of the physical issue that's occurring now was attached to a past life, or part of an emotional issue comes from things that have been brought forward into this lifetime to clear, especially those that are related to the ancestral patterns. I know a lot of people are really not just clearing their own stuff, but they're clearing all that ancestral line. And that makes it really difficult because let's say they get everything cleared up for them and bam, 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 that ripples out. And it's hard to imagine how it ripples out into the past and begins to clear everything. So as it's brought to the future, it's already cleared. And then you can start to work issue by issue by issue. The problem is sometimes as people are clearing all of these things, they forget that it really is something they came to clear, not something that they have to experience. The experiential aspect of it is to raise the awareness, to say, there's something going on in this knee. A lot of people will drop into that and say, oh my gosh, I've got a knee issue. You know, my grandpa had it and my dad had it, so I'm going to have it. Instead of saying, wait a minute, if my grandpa had it and my dad had it, could this be like a miasm that's being passed down through this genetic lineage? And if it is, what is its originating cause? Because we know that everything that happens in the physical body actually happens outside the body. It just depends on which field that it happened in. Was it emotional? Was it mental? Was it a spiritual lockdown? Was it a disconnection from the matrix to the heart to be able to pull in and to receive that higher dimensional energy? What is it that's caught in that knee? And as we begin to break these things down, healing can occur instantaneously. Now, sometimes once it permeates the physical, we have to understand there are physical processes because we operate under certain laws on this earth plane, on this 3D plane. And so if we've had an issue for a long time, that means it's already permeated, it's already causing, or it's stuck. But even those things can begin to be cleared as well. And so when I say things can happen instantaneously, if someone just starts to experience something, or even if they've had it for a short period of time, the propensity for it being cleared 100% is much higher than, let's say, if someone's had something for 40 or 50 years, although that can be cleared as well.
Mm-hmm. And does it easily, like when you're working on the energetic level, the quantum level, and you clear it? I loved you talking about the Brillo pads and clearing those out. So if you're able to energetically clear those, it ultimately helps to clear it out of even their physical experience, right?
It does. And I'll give you a good example. So I was working with a lady the other day. We pulled out and we released and we talked about everything that we found in the Brillo pad, and the Brillo pad was gone. But what happens is there's a little shadow in that area. And that is, if you would, like in the physical body, you would say it's scar tissue. But when it happens in the matrix, that shadow's actually holding, they call it a shadow echo. It's an echo of what was there, but it contains all of the lessons that was learned by that experience so that you do not have to experience that again. So let's say one of the things is someone was clearing anger the other day, okay? So in clearing anger, it was showing up in the liver. Okay, so we had tied the liver issue back to the anger, which also had some ancestral components to it as well. And so when we have the shadow echo, when anger shows up in a person's life, that helps them to not immediately drop into that anger. It helps them to say, oh, wait a minute. I know this person is triggering me. Actually, this is a gift. What am I learning? What are they showing me? Because I'm the one that needs to heal, not the person that's triggering me. You know, they're coming and showing me something inside of me. If someone is talking and all of a sudden you start feeling this irritated feeling about them, it's like, what about me is being irritated. Why am I irritated? Because it's always about us, okay? The other person is just showing and being able to reflect back to that person. So we're dealing with the anger. So the first time she got angry, she recognized what it was, but she still got angry. She dropped into it. She was in the human condition, but it wasn't as bad. The next time something shows up, she dropped into the anger. It's like, oh, wait a minute. This really isn't mine. All of a sudden now she drops into, I'm helping to clear X, Y, and Z. And as she goes around, because one of the beautiful things about the universe is it always gives it us the opportunity to circle back to make sure we really have it. Circle back. Do you really have it? Circle back. Are you sure you really have it? Because each time we become more and more desensitized to it until that anger situation pops up and we have zero response. Well, when she started having less and less anger episodes, she started noticing that by her medical test, her liver enzymes were lowering. And she noticed that all of a sudden, that pain she had been experiencing was lessening. And so this is just an example of how when we have the awareness, not just when the liver hurts because of something else. The liver is just a sign. It is, hey, there's something going on with me. And when we start to look at our body as being made up of all these little pixelizations, and we begin to understand that everything is contained within the whole, and we understand that we hold these imprints, and when we begin to release them, then we begin to pull in a new set of energetic codes, because all of a sudden, this area that had been blocked now can start to receive higher information that can filter down into the liver. All of a sudden, the chakra that was associated with that begins to spin quicker, and it begins to release everything that was stuck in there. Because when we work on one thing, it trickles out. It could be a meridian line, it could be a chakra, or it could be what's called a ley line. Now, a ley line within the energetic grid begins below our feet, about a foot, and it extends upward at least 6 feet above our head, okay? And that is just a little bit outside of our holographic field, yet it's filtering and it's connected in with the fields that we're receiving the information from. And each of these ley lines are made up of hundreds of thousands of data streams of information. So it's like if this is a ley line, all of these little hairs is containing those data streams of information. Those data streams of information can also become infiltrated from outside of us because we are connected to all things, front and back and left and right. And these ley lines, honestly, I really believe that that's what the Native Americans were talking about when they were speaking of the web of life, that we are all connected. Because literally, when you can see it, we are all connected. And sometimes those people that are, let's say you work with people or maybe you live with people, they can imprint on your field. And if you have those days where maybe the shield's a little low, you're leaking power, maybe you're just too tired, whatever the situation is, sometimes even those outside influences can start to influence the interior, and they can begin to imprint. And then we begin to think they're ours. The same thing with people who are empathic. A lot of times they're feeling all this host of information. Well, that's not happening inside their fields, but it's being imprinted on their fields. And unless we're learning how and we're clearing that information on a regular basis, people can begin to think that what they're experiencing actually is theirs. And they take that on, and the next thing that happens is it manifests physically.
Wow. That's so fascinating. Oh my goodness. Well, ladies, this has just been incredible. I've learned so much, and really enjoyed being with you both. I would love for you to tell people how to get your new book, Cosmic Convergence. And you have shared so much expertise, and I know that there are going to be people who want to know how to work with you directly. So please share all that. So Barbara,
yeah.
can you start?
Yes, well, I am still doing the regression work very, very happily and very often. And to reach me, I think the easiest way for people to remember is to just go to my website, which is barbaralamregression.com, barbaralamregression.com. And in that website, there's a place where you can type in, as you would type in an email to me, and it gets forwarded to my email, which I will answer, and we go from there. So that is a very good way. And I also have a lot of different podcasts on my YouTube channel, which is Barbara Lamb ET Regressions. Barbara Lamb ET Regressions. And that covers a lot of subjects of, what most of us would consider unusual experiences of a whole variety that I have had that have really opened me up to doing all this work and other people's experiences as well. And then as far as the book is concerned, Cosmic Convergence, which we've just been talking about, that's available on Amazon.com and on the other big book formats as well. So it's available right now.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And it's a huge
Thank you so much.
for people. Sheila and I are just so excited about it because we've been able to share a lot of the things that we've been learning along the way that most people don't know. And some people are very, very interested in learning more about all these different aspects of reality. And I
Yeah,
think
that's
it's
beautiful.
a very fine influence in the world right now because there's so many dramatic, negative things going on, fearful things going on. I mean, they really are here in this world that we're in, this physical 3D dimension. And it's very wonderful and I think important for people to realize that there's so much more than all of that drama going on. So much
Yes.
to them and to everybody and to all of reality. So it's really a wonderful mind stretcher and based on real experience that people have had and based in reality. It's just a larger reality than most of us have been aware of.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you so much. It makes me think of like a teeter-totter. And, one side's got that drama, that heaviness, that negative influences, and then your book's here, like on the other end, like trying to help to balance it out more.
Oh, that's
So,
nice. Thank you. That's a good metaphor for all of that.
yeah. Wonderful. And Sheila, how can people connect with your work?
Well, it's very easy to find. SheilaSeppi.com. SheilaSeppi.com. And you'll be able to find everything about my services, upcoming classes, if I'm doing channelings. Then also, of course, the book is there. And so you'll just go to the books section and click on it, and it will take you into the new book, Cosmic Convergence, that we've been talking about. Or you can also find out about Walk-ins, Cosmology of the Soul. But both of those are found on Amazon.
Beautiful. And I want to also mention you're the founder of the Conscious Awakening Network, too. So just share a little bit about that, too, before we finish.
Oh, my goodness. We're so super excited about the Conscious Awakening Network. We're in the process of upgrading to a brand new platform, pulling all of the aspects that we have been offering over the years into this one platform. So we have conscious content that people can watch and download and listen to. So we have, podcasting on all the major podcasting platforms. We're associated with all the major television, Roku, Amazon, Apple TV, Samsung, all of those major platforms. We're now able to do live streaming on our site. We're able to do the events on our site. And we have marketplace and a university that's being set up, and we offer memberships and affiliate programs. So, we're just super excited. But all of that has come from my desire to be a way shower on the planet and to, implement my walk-in mission. Because when I came, we were already working in the collective consciousness of humanity. But it's different when you're working to bring light codes into a field versus being able to talk one-on-one with someone. So you're able to make a different type of an impact. So with me being boots on the ground, everything that I do is really in service to humanity and finding new and different ways to talk to people about spirituality and to let them know that they are so much more than they've really ever been told that they are.
Oh, beautiful. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sheila and Barbara. I have just loved this so much, and I wish you all the best with this amazing adventure that you're both on together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Soul Elevation. Please take a moment to think about someone in your life who might be uplifted or have their curiosity sparked by this content, and please send it on to them. Let's keep sharing high-frequency, empowering content to reinforce the highest potential for humanity. I also invite you to subscribe to this content. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.